Alaikum. We'll start in a few minutes. Just waiting for more people.
Wa alaikum assalam. Okay, very good.
Assalamualaikum, Nihal. That's up.
Wa alaikum assalam. Welcome.
Welcome to you. Thank you. I think we should start, right, Nihal?
Nihal may have stepped.
Yeah, I'm here. Sure, we can start. I don't see why not.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to. Oh, did I stop the screen share? No. You all can still see this, the lines of poetry, right?
Yes.
Oh yes, beautiful.
Okay, good. Sounds good. Let me just bring this over here. Okay. All right. Who's gonna check the Facebook link?
Sajid, there's the sun shining there in Jersey?
It's loud and clear. Beautiful.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it really brought smile to my face this morning.
Great. And better than that, there's a blue moon tonight.
It was?
Yeah. So
Oh, that was the once in a blue moon?
once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
But it's going to come back, inshallah, again on October 31st at 2 a.m.
Oh,
Yes, it's a basically called a hunter's moon or a blue moon.
very good.
And the other day, I think we had that like Mars or like whatever it was like intersecting with Mars or something, the moon.
Right. So there are going to be some meteor showers also. So keep an eye out on the moon. It's really pretty, especially if you are close to a water body and the moon reflects in the water. It's something to watch out.
Sounds good. Alrighty. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma ya muqallib al-qulub thabbit qulubana ala ta'atik. Ya muqallib al-qulub ثبت قلوبنا على دينك اللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله آمين يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone that's watching online, whether you're on Zoom or you are on Facebook. Last week, we, alhamdulillah, were honored to conduct this class in person, and it was really nice. It was a little hot outside, but it was nice to see everyone and to come together. Obviously, it's a little tough right now with the situation that we're in, to bring people together to discuss things. And it was nice to be surrounded by a lot of old faces, alhamdulillah, old and new faces. Today we are going to be starting Allama Iqbal's Shikwa, right, which is one of his more famous poems, right, one of his classical works that many people are familiar with. It's been translated into songs, it's been translated into qawalis, it's been translated in many ways, though the words for sure have been translated, but many would say that the spirit within it has kind of remained untranslated and that it is untranslatable, because at the same time, as much as one tries to take another's emotions or words or thoughts or feelings and tries to put them in their own, the best way you can understand someone is to do what? Is to take what that person is feeling and you put yourself in their shoes, as opposed to taking what they have within themselves and you make them conform to your mindset, which is often something we end up doing. When we work in translation, we're taking someone else's mindset and forcing it into a box in which it may not fit. Parts of it may get lost. So in trying to do some understanding of Allama Iqbal's work and poetry, we're going to be taking a look at his shikwa, and I'm going to also put some notes to the side for those of you that may not have been here last week or who could not have come or who aren't familiar with the Urdu language, because the point of today, the point of all these sessions every Sunday is for sure to engage with people, is to talk to them about the thought of Allama Iqbal, but at the same time, it's also to make sure that we're doing justice to what we're reading by just focusing on a few lines, right? And we're going to be talking about a couple of things here. The first thing we're going to be talking about, and I'm going to write it on the, you'll see it on the Zoom, is ideas of self, right? Ideas of self, which are just going to be mentioned in the first few lines here. So at the top, Allama Iqbal will say, why am I supposed to be the loser, right? When be somebody who doesn't really understand their own benefit. And we're going to talk about ideas of the future, ideas of sadness, ideas of staying quiet, ideas of not having a sense of self-realization, ideas of not saying what is within you, right? At the same time, it's about teaching people courage to speak, even if their words are not perfect, even if they are not going to be what people want to hear exactly. So that's what today is going to, inshallah, be about. The word shikwa, which this is titled, the poem is titled Shikwa, is also the Arabic of the same word. Shikwa is also an Arabic word, right? And the one who shaka ilallah, the one who has complained to God, right? So for example, so believe it or not, the idea of shikwa is actually present within the Quran. So you have in Surah Yusuf, where, and I'm going to give you an idea, this will help you really understand things at a different level. Because when I was actually thinking about this, I didn't come to this realization until recently. So in Surah Yusuf, we all know Surah Yusuf, there is a verse which is, Innama, and I'm going to pull it up, Ashku Bathi wa Huzni ilallah. Let me see if this will work. And share. So there's this verse here, which it was one of the few areas which, when I was preparing for today, it actually got me thinking a bit deeply. So this is Yaqub alayhi salam saying to God, right, or saying to people, right, that I only complain of my suffering. Innama ashku, right? This word is the same word as shikwa. You can hear it. You can hear the shaka, the word there, talking about how whatever Yaqub is going through, and there is an extreme sense of distress present within Yaqub, talking to his Lord, right? That I only complain to Allah. وَأَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know what he doesn't know. And I wanted to juxtapose this with something else. When Yaqub would say this, who is he actually speaking to? His sons are around him, right? So his sons, in the verse just before, verse 85, they said, Tallahi قالوا تالله تفتأ تذكر Yusuf. If you keep remembering Yusuf with this much grief, you're going to perish, you're going to lose yourself. And Yaqub said that I only complain of this suffering to Allah because none of you are going to understand what I'm trying to say. You guys are just so out there, you will not understand what I'm trying to say. So he's saying that his complaint and his difficulty in relating to people, he's acknowledging here. And now, when we go away from this and we take a look at the Shikwa poem, as we're going to take a look at it, and what Allama Iqbal actually conveys to people here, it's actually quite a realization as I was getting ready for this, because in the beginning parts of this poem, we'll see that Allama Iqbal is going to say the same exact thing. He's saying, I'm about to make a complaint to God, and I'm going to share what I'm saying, and I'm going to use words that you may not be used to, or use a tone you may not be used to, but I'm completely okay with that, right? He says, Khakam Badahan, right? He says, Khakam Badahan. So he's going to say that I have accepted what is going to be said. I have understood that people may not like me for it, but that's completely okay, because what I do need to convey is something worth saying. It's something worth being
Nihal Khan bol raha.
Excuse me? Oh, if you don't mind, if you just please mute your mics if you're not speaking. Thank you. So all of these different things we have to understand and make sure that we are understanding in totality what's going on. So that said, we're going to actually get into this, the first few lines of the Shikwa poem. You know, we're calling it a poem, but it's just so much more. It's more of, it's a complaint at the end of the day, right? It's a write-up. And we're going to see that Allama Iqbal was ready to put everything that he had on hold. If he had to, if people were going to not believe him or take him seriously, that was fine. He was ready for that. And we'll see that throughout this, what his emotions and feelings are. And brothers and sisters, the point of this class is not so we can have moments where we just go, wow, 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 kya baat hai, right? Oh, wow, so amazing. The point of this, and I don't want to call it a course, it's a discussion. The ideas that are present within here, are we understanding them, number one? Number two, if we understand them, are we able to relay them to people in a very simple manner, right? In a very simple manner, not getting lost in the high quality of Urdu words, of the Farsi background, of the Arabic background, but are we able to take these concepts, and through this discussion, are we able to go ahead and convey them to other people? That's our point today, inshallah. So we can go ahead and begin. If someone would like to read, you are more than welcome. And then we're going to go ahead and break down what is being said here, inshallah. So anyone would like to give it a shot?
Do you want me to?
Sure.
Iqbal says, क्यों ज़यांकार बनूं, सूद फरामोश रहूं, फिक्र फरदा न करूं, महवे गमे दोष रहूं, नाले बुलबुल के सुनूं और हमा तनगोश रहूं, हम नवा मैं भी कोई गुल हूं कि खामोश रहूं, जुर्रत आमोज मेरी ताबे सुखन है मुझको, शिकवा अल्लाह से हाकम बदहन है मुझको.
Very powerful. Very powerful. So the first part here, when Allama Iqbal begins to speak, he says two things, right? And I'm going to show them here as well. Kyun zayankar bano, right? There's this word he says, which is zayankar, right? And we're going to go through them. Basically, someone who is a loser or someone who is a failure. So he's asking, right? Why should I be a loser or a failure, right? And then the second part of it, he says, Sud faramosh, right? Right? There's another word, sood faramosh. And I'm not going to directly translate this, but there's a couple of ways of looking at it. The first aspect was somebody, one who forgets his own self-worth, or one who forgets his own being, or what he has to offer, what she has to offer. And there's also another way of looking at somebody who potentially is unaware of themselves. They're unaware of their potential, right? Now, there's something else that should be mentioned here. In Urdu, the word sood refers to usury, right? And as we know, as Muslims, we don't generally accept usury to be a permissible way of earning wealth, right? We also know that. So he's saying here that, like, I have the potential to gain, I have the potential to be something, regardless of all these laws that are being produced. Like, I have this potential, right? And I'm letting it go. I'm letting it go for a higher reason. And then the third thing he says is, fikr farda na karu, right? Fikr is thinking, right? Farda refers to the future. So thinking about the future, right? What does the future hold? Right? What does the future hold? Meaning what? The future referring to what? Our whole life. That's all we do. We plan for the future, right? I'm going to go for this many years to school so that I can get a better degree. I can get a better idea of who I can become. We have Zayaqad here. Right, Sood Faramosh. We have Fikr Farda. And then we're going to go for the fourth one in a second. So thinking about the future is something we always do. Right? We're always thinking about what the next thing is. We're thinking about marriage. We're thinking about children. We're thinking about grandchildren. We're thinking about, and you know, you maybe think is like, oh, if I'm an older person, how can I think about? Well, you're thinking about your will. You're thinking about your progeny. You're thinking about what you're going to leave behind. Right? Why am I going to, you know, forget? Why is that? I'm stopping myself from doing that. Right? And then there's the other aspect. This is mahwe gham, excuse me, mahwe gham dosh rahu, right? Mahwe gham dosh, this is a really interesting way of putting this. Being engulfed in the worries of the past, right? You're somebody that you're constantly thinking about the worries of the past. Because one thing that Allama Iqbal, you'll see in a lot of his poetry, would be like, he would be talking about, you'd be talking about all these different things in the past that would occur, right? What happened to the Muslims. And not only that, it's not just being worried about the past, but thinking about the past for fixing the current, right? Fixing the present, fixing the now. So Allama Iqbal is saying that, why should I be somebody that's so concerned about what happened in the past, right? Gham refers to, oops, I just gotta fix this. Right? Mahwe. So mahwe ghamdosh, right? So mahu basically refers to being engulfed, right? Or engaged in. I like the word engulfed. In the worries of the past, I guess you could say. So now you have these four things he's talking about, right? In these two lines, right? The idea of thinking you're a failure, the idea of being unaware of your potential, the idea of actually forgetting the future, right? And being engulfed only in the worries of the past. So he's making these complaints, right? He's saying that these four things, people, like, why should I like do these things? And he's posing rhetorical questions that will later be answered. Before I move on, does anyone have anything to add? Dr. Saab or anyone else? Okay.
Let me just open the sari.
Yeah.
You see, this is his prologue before he lodges the complaint. So he's in a way giving a justification. Mm-hmm. So he says, why should I work at a loss and not think about my own benefit? Faramosh means bhul jana. Zaya means nuksan. Zayan khar jo nuksan ka baat kare. Fikr means thinking also, and also worries also. It's a mixed kind of a thing. Farda means tomorrow, not necessarily very long future, but the farda is just coming tomorrow.
Okay.
And then everything that follows after that is included. Mahv is somebody who's totally lost and busy in it. Gham, of course, is worries. Dosh is yesterday. The time past is dosh. So he is building up a prologue as to these are the reasons I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So because of this, not then you will tell us about the rest of the stuff. But what I'm saying is he actually is not complaining yet. He's saying, he's thinking within himself now, why should I do this? Why shouldn't I? And then he moves forward.
Interesting. So this is his internal dialogue.
Yeah, internal. First 3 months. This is a nazm that is set in musaddas, which means 6 verses in each band.
Yeah.
And the first 4 have Sam Kafi and Sam Radif, and the last 2 have different ones. And that was a very common way of calling nazm at that time. Prior to Iqbal, others have done this. So first 3 bands that you will see will be his prologue. Then the next 3 will be something in between, the reaction of others as to what the sky said, what the stars said. And then his shikwa will start after the 6th one. You will see that as we go along. But beautiful. You analyzed it very well. You dissected it very good.
Thank you.
MashaAllah. Nihal, there are also other people on the call. If you want to ask, if anybody wants to chime, I know we have some sisters, some ladies on the call.
We have enough people now, 12 people on. Yeah.
Yeah, so
If
MashaAllah.
anyone would like to read, I mean, you're more than welcome to. Any sisters, if you want to read, please, you can actually read these lines and then I'll explain them.
Anybody? Saima, Sadia, Safia. Okay, going once.
Yeah, again, if you want to read, I would love to let you read, and then we can dissect it one more time.
Let me just say one more thing also. Being a poet, I can tell you one easy way of reading this is, let's say the last 2 verses, right? Jurat Amoz meri tabe sukhan hai mujhko. If you read it, you can say, meri tabe sukhan mujhko jurat amoz hai. Makes it easy. Khakam badahan mujhko Allah se shikwa hai. You see how simplified it is? When if you transpose those words, khakam badhan, pehle wo kehta hai mere muh mein khak, mujhko Allah se shikwa hai. Usse pehle meri tabe sukhan mujhko jurat, meri tabe sukhan mujhko jurat amoz hai. Mujhko ye tak de rahi hai. So this is another way of reading it. So you know that the poetry is really very, very classic.
Dr. I want to ask you one more thing. More specifically, here he's basically saying that there is potential to be claimed, but one is choosing not to claim it. Hence, he's saying that he's a failure in that sense, right?
No. He's basically faramosh means somebody who forgets about it.
He forget about it.
Why should I keep ignoring it? Faramosh karna maine bhul jana.
Yeah.
मैं इसको अब कैसे बिल्कुल भूल जाऊं? भूल जाने में काफी कुछ इन्वॉल्व है. इसमें ये कि ना लूं, आइंदा लूंगा, पहले लिया था नहीं लिया, सब कुछ. फरामोश means totally not deal with the subject. तो सूद फरामोश, अपने फायदे के बारे में बिल्कुल ही खामोश रहूं, अपने फायदे की न सोचूं.
So you don't know anything.
Yeah, why should I not think about my own gain, or why should I forget about taking any kind of profit or gain?
So it can go back to what we had spoken about in the Tawheed poem. Khud Musalman se hai poshida Musalman ka maqam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that will be the theme that will run throughout Iqbal's poetry.
Yeah.
Because he wants you to recognize who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good.
I see Zija has also joined. Assalamu alaikum, Zija. Any comments, questions?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Just one insight to share. Professor Moeen Nizami has done a lot on, and his lectures explaining some of the aspects of the Kalam of Iqbal are available on YouTube. But I remember one thing he said about shikwa, which is very instructive. And maybe Dr. Abdur Rahman Saab can translate this one word for me at the end, because I can't find an equivalent of this Urdu word in in English, but what he said was, and everyone who speaks Urdu will understand, Iqbal bade laad se isme shikwa kar rahe hain.
Lard se, हाँ.
Lard.
Yes.
Lard, meaning that when a kid, there is a way that if an outsider were to see some kid who loves his mother and father very much, but sometimes he really is arguing with them, but there is lard in there, there's not disrespect.
Yeah.
So he emphasizes this, that the entire shikwa is Allama's love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unequivocal, but he is complaining with a lot of lard. Now, if somebody can translate what lard.
Yeah, it's the same. You just said it basically, the same thing. It's a very lovingly kind of approach towards somebody that you respect hugely.
Exactly.
So lard is, you know, parents love their children anyway, but the little one that can't even ask for anything, uske saath lard kiya jata hai. बड़ों के साथ लाड इतना नहीं होता, लाड उसके साथ होता है जो अपने लिए कुछ मांग ना सके. Excuse me. So that's a very innocent love. That's called lard.
Right.
So, Zija, could you explain what the context of that was, the first few lines here, just for anyone that may not be familiar with the whole background?
No, the whole point of the shikwa, the complaint, because I'm glad you mentioned the Quranic aspect of shikwa is not that is alien to the prophetic example or within the Islamic teachings, but people are jarred by the vocabulary. If you're not, again, holistically, if you haven't read Iqbal, it's some aspects of this are shocking. How can somebody lay all their complaints at the feet of God when Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says we are responsible for our actions? Allama recognizes that, but the whole concept of the shikwa to understand is it's a kid who's come back to his parents and very placing this in front of them, saying, I don't get it, I don't understand, I did everything you asked me to do, yet still almost the concept of maktaba ishq ke andaz nirale dekhe chutti usko na mili jisne sabak yaad kiya. So it's almost like we did everything, but he doesn't. Even in his complaint, you can see how the jawab will come 3-4 years later with that you think you did everything, but you didn't scratch the surface of everything. So just the whole concept, to try and explain the concept of this complaint, where it's coming from somebody who's totally dedicated to, immersed in, obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but wants to understand at a higher level.
Yeah, that helps. Can you guys see this Quranic verse, by the way? Is it visible to everyone, the verse of the Quran?
Yes, we see it.
So I actually remember something else, another aspect of shikwa as it will be present within the Quran. So there's this famous verse in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, Am hasibtum, that do you think, an tadkhulul jannah, that you will enter paradise, walamma ya'tikum, and there has not come to you, mathalul ladina khalaw min qablikum, like the trials and tribulations of the people of the past. So what about the people of the past? Massathumul ba'sa'u wad-dharra, they were struck by poverty and difficulty, وَزُلْزِلُوا, and literally the earth quaked beneath them. حَتَّى يَقُولَ الرَّسُولُ, now look at this, until the messenger and those with them said, مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ, when is God's help coming? This help of, when is it coming? When is it? Think about this, the messenger is saying this, right? And you could say that this is a form of like saying, Ya Allah, like we don't know what's happening. When is this help of Allah coming? And even they're being shaken. Ala inna nasrullahi qareeb, right? And indeed Allah's help is near. And so I was thinking about this verse right here, Mata nasrullah. When is the help of Allah coming? This was shikwa. Ala inna nasrullahi qareeb. You could see that as jawab shikwa.
Beautiful.
You know, God's help is near. And I was looking at that and I'm just like, as somebody who memorized the Quran and who was going through this when he was much younger and who's now older and is like reading this, and I'm like, this is phenomenal. I wonder if someone like Allama Iqbal put this together in that form and in this I guess qafi is the wrong word, but in this context, I guess, where you see some aspect of a complaint and then you see the response to the complaint right after that.
Right.
So it's mind-blowing.
It is. This is why Iqbal says that if you see anything contrary to Quranic message in my kalam, then I may be punished in the hereafter. So it's a beautiful topic that he talks about. But basically, Iqbal has drawn most of his poetry from Quran and Sunnah, mashallah. Quran and Hadith, I should say. Yeah.
I'm actually going to add that right here, just like Quranic reference, because
Yeah.
I felt that was good to know. So I think the first one I had done was Surah, what was it, 2114. We just did that one. And you can kind of use this for your own notes. And the first one was, where was the first one? Innama ashku bathi, right? Innama ashku bathi. 1286. So those are some interesting points of reference. Okay, anyone else, or you can move on? Okay. So let's look at the second part. He says, Naale bulbul ke sunu aur hamatan gosh rahu. Hamatan. Ham nawa main bhi koi gul hu ke khamosh rahu. Naale bulbul. The bulbul is a form of a bird that he's talking about, or the nightingale, right? And he's talking about how when this bird is beckoning or the bird is crying, right? People hear it. They hear the bird crying. But when you hear someone crying, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to comfort them. You're supposed to go to them. You're supposed to ask them. You're supposed to see beyond their pain. You're supposed to see beyond what is going on with them. And the incident that this reminded me of, actually, there's a famous hadith in which a woman is at a grave bemoaning her loved one. She's very sad that her loved one passed away. And the Prophet ﷺ goes to her from behind and says, just have patience, don't worry about it. And she sends him off saying that you don't know what I've been through, right? And he tried to comfort her, and then he went away and he didn't say anything. And later someone told her that this was the Prophet ﷺ. And when she was told that, the Prophet ﷺ received her, she came to him and said, I'm sorry, I didn't know who you were, that you were Rasulullah ﷺ. And his only response to her was that, that patience is in the first strike. Meaning what? When she shooed him away, or shooing away the messenger, you don't know what you're doing. The messenger ﷺ looked through the pain that she was going through, waited for her to get better. She came to him and then he engaged with her. So Allama Sahib here is saying, Naale bulbul ke sunu, right? Or hamatan gosh rahu. And I shouldn't do anything, basically. Or I should just stay quiet. Like, is that what you want me to do? I hear people crying. The ummah is letting out, is going through a difficult state, and people are lost and people don't know what to do, and I have to do nothing about it, right? Is that basically the state that I have to stay in? I have to do nothing about it, right? Hum nawa hai, right? And I think nawa here referred to like a friend or a companion in this sense, right? Or hum nawa, right? Hum nawa, it was like a companion. Maybe koi gul hu, am I just like a plant or a flower? Gul would be just like a rose, if I'm correct, right? I tried to look it up. I know like flower.
Any flower would be called.
Right? Yeah. Right. You just sit there and look pretty. That's the good way to look at it. You just sit there and look pretty, right? Am I just a flower that sits there and looks pretty, right? Hum nawa, maybe koi gul hu. Am I just like something to sit around and look pretty? Ke khamosh rahu, I just stay silent, right? Because we often have that, right? Like people will say that that silence is golden. And sure, silence is golden, but we as a community are always finding ourselves in positions where when we're supposed to say something, we don't say anything, right? And when we are not supposed to say something, we basically speak when there's not a time to speak. That's not the place to speak. It's not your authority to speak. But here, Allama Sahib is saying that someone has to say something, right? Someone has to do something. You can't just stay quiet, right? Naale bulbul ke sunu, right? You hear the cries, you hear what's going on, you hear the pangs, and you're doing nothing, right? And you're saying nothing when you're supposed to say something. And I want you to keep this in mind. Obviously, there were outside infiltrators within the Muslim community at that time. For those of you that are familiar with the history of the Indian subcontinent, there was European colonization happening in India, right? We had the French in the south, you had the Portuguese in the Goa area, you had the British basically having taken over everything, and then there were also infighting between the Mughals and the Marathas and the Nizams. Like all these different people were there, but the British were slowly taking over. And as we know, in the mid 1800s, when there was an uprising against the British, that uprising originally was crushed, and then the British Raj came into play, and the British Raj wreaked utter havoc on the Indian subcontinent. You know, subhanAllah, like when we talk about this, and I've spoken to academics about this, and it just blows my mind. Wallahi, it blows my mind when I talk to people about this. When you talk to people, right, and we are familiar with the Holocaust, we're familiar with genocides that occurred in Bosnia, that occurred in Rwanda, that occurred in Germany, that occurred in all these different places that are occurring right now in China amongst our Uyghur Muslim brothers and sisters. But when you talk to someone and say that Winston Churchill ordered that 3 million Bengalis be starved to death, we don't actually consider that to be a genocide, even though it was a targeted group that was starved on purpose for the purpose of dying. I remember talking to an academic, a Harvard academic, who was like, yeah, maybe we can call it mass murder, but we cannot call it a directed genocide. And my thing is, call it what you want, but the fact that we don't talk about how these events occurred is something problematic. We all know that our Sikh brothers and sisters were shot and killed, right, by the British. We all know this. Not to get too much into politics, but you know, there's a really interesting person. Many of you may have heard of him, and regardless of what you say, I felt there was something he said that was really important to understand. Shashi Tharoor, right? He's an MP in India, and he's written a lot about British colonization and the history behind it. But one thing he said was that how interesting would it be if England, because the British Empire like killed millions upon millions upon millions of people all throughout the world. Sure, they were the winners of World War II. That's there, right? But at the same time, you know, it takes two hands to clap. And just because you've done something good does not wipe out the bad that you've done, especially if you have not admitted to that bad. But one of the things of British colonization, in its colonization of the African continent, of its colonization of Australia, of its colonization of the of the New World, of the colonization of India, are the millions of people that they had killed, whether it was the Native Americans or our indigenous Indian brothers and sisters, of our, you know, our ancestors, our mothers, our fathers, our grandfathers, our granduncles, which led to other countries being formed because these men are sitting in a room just literally drawing a line down a map, and regardless of who lives on that line, doesn't matter, we're going to ruin their lives with the stroke of a pen. It's just really interesting that they don't even admit that we messed up or we shouldn't have done this. So Shashi Tharoor mentions, if they simply said that we are going to pay the restitution of €1 to India, they said that that may be enough for the country to find healing, but they can't even do that. Right now, we're talking about this 100 years later. Allama Iqbal's living through this, right? He's literally living through this, right? It's the early 1900s. He's seeing people being killed. He's seeing the states being taken. The British Raj is there, right? We know the stories of them taking people who were considered terrorists to them, but there were people seeking their own freedom, tying them to cannons and just blowing them to shreds. Allama, and I'm not just saying this to get you all riled up. I'm saying this because I want you to see and understand the context that Allama Iqbal is living in during the time he is writing this, during a time where, like, I want you to think about this. Imagine being under occupation by the Germans and you going to Berlin and saying, yeah, I'm here to really like learn. But deep down inside, you are scared of your people getting thrown into jail. You are scared of your people being killed, right? And we also know, for example, in World War II, a lot of the Indians, right, at that time, there was no India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, but a lot of the Indians at that time who were sent to fight in World War II, they weren't sent by their own choice. They were sent because if they weren't sent, their families would be killed by the British, right? So all of this is like, and even though Allama Iqbal dies before World War II, there are patterns that lead up to such behavior, right? That's one thing, but there are other patterns that lead people to accept that behavior. right? And make you forget where you came from. You know, when we were studying at Nadwatul Ulama, it was really interesting. I don't think I have the book with me here, but there was a famous compendium of Islamic law called Al-Hidayah. And law and jurisprudence are things which are derived based on an actual event that happened, right? So like fiqh is a event that is codified because of a situation that arose. So what the British asked was, hey, can you guys take your law books, translate them into common law, so we can basically box you in, and your situations will not be experiential, will not be will not have variety to them like other human experiences do. Like if there's marriage problems, you're only going to have one type of marriage problem. If you don't have this one type of marriage problem, then you have to find a way to find a solution based on what we're going to do. So they literally went into educational assets of the Muslim community, made us translate our books so that into English so that they could read them and use them to control the community, right? Now, history is there, it's done and over, it's 100 years later. But at the same time, those power structures that allowed this to happen, that the same British Empire that did all of that simply reformed itself into the current United Kingdom, right? And the monarchy still is alive and whatnot. And you know, I'm saying all of this to give you an idea as to what actually Allama Sahib is writing about. That's what he's seeing all around him, right? Hum nawa mein bhi koi gul hoon. Am I just this pretty flower? I can't say anything. Under a colonized India, I went and studied in Germany. I went and studied at Oxford. Great, I got that. I'm coming home. But I went to study within that same power structure that has been destroying, killing, raping, maiming my people. Think about that when he's writing this line. Hum nawa mein bhi koi gul hoon ke khamosh. Am I just supposed to sit there and stay quiet? But that's the main point. I'm actually just going to expound on this so you kind of can see the words, and then we can see. So Nale Bulbul, right? You have this. Nale Bulbul refers to the cry of the nightingale, right? Of the nightingale. You have that. Hamatan goes. Yes.
नाल नहीं लिखो, नाले लिखो ना.
Oh, oops, sorry.
एक नाला होता है और एक
yeah.
प्लूरल नाले.
There you go.
नाला या हाँ नाले हाँ.
Yeah, Nale Bulbul, right? Right? Should I listen to the cry that's being emanating from the world?
Let me simplify this for you. He's just giving giving you an example. He's giving you an example of a flower.
Yeah.
The flower is in the garden. He listens to all the crying of the nightingale, but can't do anything because he's all ears. He cannot say anything. He says, I'm not like that. तो मैं कोई फूल तो नहीं हूं कि बुलबुल की क्राई सुनता रहूं और पूरा का पूरा कान बन के बैठा रहूं जैसे कि मेरी ज़बान ही नहीं. Hama means total, tan means body, gosh means ear. My whole body is just one ear. Only take in, listen, and not be able to say, मैं ऐसा नहीं हूं. So he's basically drawing a picture that I am different. We humans are different than inanimate objects. They listen and they can't do anything about it, but I am a human. Allamahul bayan. I have been taught to speak, so I should say something. That's a comparison he's giving. Is a poetic way of putting his argument forward.
So basically he's saying that I'm not just going to sit here and listen, I'm actually going to do something about this.
Bilkul, because that's the difference between me and a flower. And he's talking to his hum nawas, people that are with him at the time. Hum nawa means jiski आवाज के साथ आपकी आवाज मिल रही हो. Hum means together, nawa means the sound. People who are
the like-minded, you could say?
No, they can have different thoughts. No, they are not like-minded. He says, you are with me. You are in the gulshan with me, in the garden with me. You could be a nightingale, you could be a dove, you could be a parrot. All those are hum nawas, people that are making sound in the garden at the time. So are in the community, people that are around you, some are going to work, some are going to talk about this, some are accepting it, some are not. They are all hum nawa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. So khamosh, obviously, I think a lot of these words.
Khamosh is quiet, yeah.
Yeah, right. Everyone. I'm just thinking, like, I think that there wasn't too much difficulty in this line, so it's fine.
No, the Urdu is kind of a little difficult, but
yeah, this one is fine. But okay, so I went through all that. Dr. Saab, anything to add in these 2 lines?
No, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
No, this is beautiful. You did a great job. You gave it.
Hamnawa is also used for the Qawwali group. You know, when somebody introduces a Qawwali group, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan or Hamnawa के साथ, you know.
जो आवाज के साथ आवाज मिलाते हैं.
आवाज के साथ
That's an implied meaning of this. Yes.
That's a nice one. जो अपनी आवाज दूसरों की आवाज के साथ मिलाते हैं.
मिलाते हैं, हाँ.
So basically those whose voices join with other people. So
exactly. Those people.
Modern day example of that, when people are chanting together, when people are cheering together.
No, in Qawwali, basically they are repeating what you're saying and they join with you. All the words are coming out of you.
Yeah.
That is the background for Qawwali and Hamnawa.
Yeah.
There they do not really have anything that they add themselves. They basically join in the chorus.
Yeah. Zija, do you have anything to add to this?
No, mashallah, it's been covered very, very nicely with you. I would just add the point that you made about us being having turned away from our own history. It's so important that we need to be aware. I completely agree with you, the point that you made. It's a slightly different point, but how is it? It's only because colonialism succeeded that it took an entire what happened in Bengal with our Bengali brothers, 3 million, right? What Leopold did in is forgotten, but even words have been allocated to certain things. It's so important for us to become historically literate at a minimum to understand this. Until we understand what was happening all over the world, what the project of modernity and colonialism was, it's very difficult. So for a different thing, maybe inshallah sometimes in the future we can also have lectures where we try and reclaim and understand our history as well.
Yeah, I think that's another thing, because you know, I'll be very open with you all. This is a discussion. I grew up as a kid in New Jersey. I'm born and raised in New Jersey, right? But I remember, and for those of you that are listening that are parents, I want you to pay very close attention to this. This is not a third hand or a second hand thing. I want to give you an idea of how difficult it is to maintain, forget your Desi identity, but your bare minimum Muslim identity. And this is not just my experience. A lot of people, you'll see this, right? Is that I would shy away from having relatives come to school who wore hijab. I would shy away of saying that I'm a Muslim, or I would shy away from all of this. And then you begin to realize that something is off about this, right? There is what we call a hegemonic culture that is present within, taking us away from our roots and forcing us to conform, to be a certain way, to speak a certain way. And you all know what I'm talking about, where, you know, Donald Trump did something good for us, and I'll tell you what. Before, a lot of young people would sit there and make fun of immigrants, make fun of accents, make fun of culture. And now we've been forced as a country to understand that deep down inside, if we have a dislike for someone or their accent and don't judge them on their knowledge and hard work, that's a problem for ourselves. And a lot of our young people, without them even realizing, have this idea in the back of their head that everything where my parents came from is a backwards place, it's a backwards country, it has backwards education. And to be frank, between America or any other country, like the one thing that we always fall into is American exceptionalism, where we think that because we're American, we're better. Because we speak American English, we're better. But at the end of the day, what matters to us is understanding our faith. And how does our faith translate, where we understand, all right, we're going to read this later, I believe in Jawab Shikwa, right? Basically, Sayyid bhi ho, Mirza bhi ho, Afghan bhi ho, right? And a lot of people fall into this, oh, we're Sayyid, or we're Arabs, or we're Turks, or we're Afghans. You're everything except you're not a Muslim. So now when young people are being taught that, oh, you're first Indian or Pakistani or Turkish or Bengali, but before that, they're not being taught that they're Muslim, it's going to be very tough, because now you find young people either turning very much so towards their cultural heritage, which is fine, but also turning toward their cultural heritage while forgetting what the actual faith underlying that cultural heritage is, or they're turning towards like a white narrative of Islam, or sorry, a white American narrative or a Black American narrative, and saying that I'm completely an American in the context that being American is not a wholesome thing. Like, you're not just American. You came from somewhere. The aspect of America that is exemplified is that being an American, you're either a native or an immigrant, right? And if you're a native, that means your family has been here for God knows how long. You can't go outside of the native American land, but you came from somewhere. But that thought process is starting, it does take root in a lot of young people's minds because of what you said, Egypt. They don't know about the history, and our kids need to be taught. They don't need to be taught hate, right? We don't sit there and hate the British. We don't sit there and hate that. But what the ancestors of these empires and these monarchs did cannot be, cannot be said like that was something good. But at the same time, you don't teach them like British bad, Mughal good, right? We all know that the Mughals didn't really do much for Islam, as much. If anything, it was because of the weakness of the Mughals that the British were able to come into India, right? Like it's not that, but we have to learn to teach our kids history, understand the past right now so you can do well in the future. Right, that past, present, future triage has to be understood. But I just wanted to mention that. If anyone has anything to add, they can.
I think, Nihal, that's an excellent idea, and I think we should have a separate session on the historical part.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody else can do that. But I think, it's very relevant. I totally get it.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. All right. We have 2 lines left. I'm going to ask if any sisters want to read. You're more than welcome to. Would love to hear from you. But yeah, 2 more lines. Who wants to finish them off? Going once.
I missed what was said. I was on the phone. I'm sorry.
Yes.
What did you say?
Oh no, I was asking the sisters if anybody wants to read the last 2 lines.
I will read it.
Okay.
जुर्रत आमोज मेरी ताबे सुखन है मुझको, शिकवा अल्लाह से खाके में बर्तन है मुझको.
Got it. So, जुर्रत आमोज मेरी ताबे सुखन है मुझको. This is where his introduction is being facilitated. It's kind of the peak of these few lines. So the idea of Jurrat Amoz, right? Jurrat it refers to having the sense of like audacity or courage to do something, right? And Jurrat Amoz is the teaching of courage, right? Like the teaching of courage. And he also uses this word, Tabiz Sukhan, which I'm actually going to write out over here, right? So we have, Jurrat Amoz, right? Which I'm going to refer to as the teaching of courage. Does that work, Dr. Saab?
I tell you, let me simplify it by saying, Meri tabe sukhan mujhko jurrat amoz hai. मेरे बोलने की ताकत मुझको ये दलेरी सिखा रही है. जुर्रत इज दलेरी, आमोज इज सिखाना. मेरी ताबे सुकून, मेरे अंदर जो बोलने की ताकत है वो मुझे ये जुर्रत दे रही है. फिर उसके बाद दूसरी लाइन है, हाकम बदहन. दहन मुंह को कहते हैं, हाकम डस्ट को कहते हैं. मेरे मुंह में खाक, मुझको अल्लाह से शिकवा है. उसी के वर्ड्स, इकबाल के वर्ड्स यूज करें. हाकम बदहन, मेरे मुंह में खाक, मुझे अल्लाह से शिकवा है. So now you can translate easily in English that my ability to speak or talk is encouraging me to say something. So I do have a complaint to my Almighty.
Got it.
And dust be into my mouth. Dust be in my mouth. I do have a complaint. This Hakam Badahan is a very, very well-known proverb in Farsi.
Right?
In Farsi. They say, whenever they say something that they shouldn't say, they say Hakam Badhan. Allah, जैसे कहते हैं ना, अस्तगफिरुल्लाह करके फिर बात करते हैं. तो इस
So it's
तरह
like an idiom more so than two
It's an
different words.
idiom, exactly. Hakam
Yeah.
Badhan was an idiom at the time. So he used that. I
Yeah.
apologize for saying that, but I do have a complaint to lodge against the.
So may I have dust in my mouth?
Yeah, not dust but dirt.
You're right. I have
Dust
dirt in
is-
my mouth.
Dust is in the air, dirt is on the ground.
It's actually interesting because this idiom, it's not a purely Persian idiom. It's actually an old
And
Arabic idiom.
Exactly.
Right? Ya laytani kuntu turaba. May I be filled with dirt in my mouth.
Right. Ba
Yeah.
means in or with.
Yeah.
The han is the oral cavity, not
Yeah.
the outer face, but the inner face.
Yeah, and tabe sukhan is the strength of speech.
Tabe Sukhan is the word that Quranic verse says, the Allamahul Bayan. Not only speak, but having a background, put thought together, have that intellect to really react to something and verbalize it. So this is a
Eloquent.
very comprehensive word. Tab is when you have the integrity, intelligence, and the diction to be able to speak very clearly as to what is on your mind,
Mhm.
which humans have, no other creation has.
Yeah. So the ability or the strength of eloquence to put things into
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jurat-e Amoz meri tabe sukhan hai mujhko.
Jurat Amos. No, not
Yeah.
Jurat.
Sorry, Jurat Amoz. Yes, Jurat
Jurat
Amoz.
Amos.
Yeah, Jurat Amoz meri tabe sukhan hai mujhko. So it's basically mentioning that his ability to speak, right? The power and ability of the eloquence that he possesses as a human being. That not only as a human being, again, we forget he's a very educated person. He could have easily gotten like a government job and been easily settled and wherever he was and done worked for the British, and that's what it was. But instead, he chose to utilize the tools that he learned to help his own people. So he's saying the power of and the ability of eloquence that he had been granted in the various languages that he knew and the education that he had and the PhD that he possessed, that he has all of this. Jurat Amoz.
No. Stick to the what God gave him only. Okay.
God gave
the faculties. God gave me that ability.
Yeah.
So that's now coaxing me to speak. Everything else that he learned afterwards doesn't take any credit here. It's basically Tabe Sohan. His God-given ability to talk. And that is where he's really claiming that you gave it to me and I'm going to use it.
Got it.
That is the background of this. That is the beauty of this particular verse.
So his God-given ability to speak, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yes.
Got
Yes.
it. So he's going to do that, right? And he's going to have the courage to do that. And what is he going to do with that?
No, he's not having courage. He says that ability is encouraging me to speak. Jurat Amoz, ye amozish kahan se aa rahi hai? Us tabe sukhan se aa rahi hai. That is what is encouraging me. And you gave me that ability. So he's not really taking a blame on himself. He says, you taught me to do,
I
do
see.
it. You get that?
Okay,
That is encouraging me. Jurat Amos, she's the one that is asking me to speak. It's not my fault.
It's like, hey, look, you gave it to me, so I'm going to use it now.
Exactly. Now you got it.
Right? It's like you already gave me the gun. It's pointed in the right direction. Time to
I'm going to use it.
That's a good way to look at it. So
yeah, but that's exactly what he said.
Yeah, the courage is referring to that. Okay, I have this thing. I'm going to use it now. That courage is there. And what am I going to do with it? Shikwa Allah se. Right? I'm going to make a complaint to God. And guess what? May I have dust in my mouth. I don't care what happens from this point. May dirt be in my mouth. But we need to do something about this.
About it, exactly.
And if you don't like me, you don't like me, right? You want to unfriend me on Facebook, unfriend me on Facebook, right? That's what it is. And now he's basically saying that it's all on the line, right? I'm putting everything up for debate herein. And now we're going to see what will come out from this. So this sense of beauty, Tabe Sukhan, is really interesting to note. And then eventually he also says what? It is what it is. Let it be what it is. You don't like me, you don't like me. Fine. That's what the main thing that he's going to show.
He's
and then from there,
mujhko Allah se shikwa hai. That's mujhko Allah se shikwa hai bas. Aur mere muh mein ha. That's it.
Like, fine, catch my tongue, but I'm saying it. right? I have a complaint against God.
Yes.
That's what it is. Okay, that's what we have for today. We ended up using the full hour, but any questions, comments? I'd love to hear from you all.
I'd like to ask maybe Saima if you have any comments on this. I know you read the thing. If you want to comment.
My comment is that I really loved that the way Dr. Saab explained, because that's the gist of it, that Iqbal is all about Quran and Sunnah and telling us that how we can love Allah and our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Reading his poetry, he gives us the message of being, how we can utilize it, how we can use it in our lives, how we can integrate him in our lives. So that's what I learned, I love about Iqbal.
Beautiful.
So,
anything else? What do you all think?
I think this excellent program, Nihal and Dr. Saab and Zija and all of you for participating. I'm just looking at the calendar here. I don't have it on me, but I'd like to figure out when are you planning to be on site again, inshallah. I know last Sunday when you were on site, it was a beautiful program.
Yeah, I actually told Dr. Zakmani, I told him for the 25th, inshallah, of October.
25th, okay. So just please note on 25th, Nihal and hopefully Dr. Saab, inshallah, you'll be on site with us.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
I should bring my books to you, Sajid Bhai. I'll get to Amir somehow, so you can give it to the group.
Of course, we'd like to get 100 copies, Dr. Saab, and we'll.
Okay.
Zach and I talked about it. We'll buy 100 books on behalf of the masjid, inshallah.
Yeah, and to everyone, like, and if you're in Princeton, you come to this class. Whether you don't come to this class, get this. Please get this. I've been looking for a long time of something that has done justice to just, it's easy. It's not highly academic, but at the same time, it doesn't just boil everything down and lose meaning. I feel like Dr. Rahman has done a wonderful job in making it easy for someone like myself even, or a young person, to really take in what he's saying with a little bit of Urdu, and to be able to look at the Rawat al-Jama, like the running translation and stuff like that. It's a really good way to really take a look at the
beauty is that it's written in English also, English translation, transliteration, words translated simply, then diction. Yeah, if you can put that. You see here, and then you have the words that are difficult in Urdu. Here it's English on the other side, simple translation. I have tried to make it in Nasr so that it's easy to understand. If you try to rhyme it in translation, then you lose the meanings.
Yeah.
So it's basically for children that are born here, may not be able to read Urdu, and they can easily benefit from it.
Honestly, if you put this on like Amazon for $20, I'm sure this would sell like hotcakes.
I am going to do that. I have it under progress, under process now, and sell it or not, but at least it should be there for benefit of those that want to learn from Iqbal.
Right. And the other thing that we talked about last week, Dr. Saab, is to start a magazine.
Yes. So, I think we have to leave our history, archive ourselves.
Right.
What we are doing today, I found out a picture that somebody gave me this Friday at the masjid in Staten Island, where we've laid the foundation, and we had a little something in our hand when to dig the ground when we were starting. That was 30, 40 years ago. That picture was so unbelievable. I was fairly young at the time when we laid the foundation for the masjid.
You were still
now
very
I'm basically tearful to see that picture. But good thing somebody took that picture and showed it to me yesterday, this past Friday. So we should do that today, because we are here today. God knows what happens tomorrow, but our children and grandchildren would like to know how things were a century ago. And if we have a document that is created third hand by us at the time, we will be third parties then. Then when I say something about Nihal, it's not him saying it, it's I saying about him. And likewise for others, then this becomes the authentic document that is good for historians of the future. And don't forget, the way I see it, and I see most of you probably will agree, there is a tremendous future for this message in this very fertile land. inshallah, that is taking place. Okay. Thank you very much.
I'll make a dua and then we can stop.
Inshallah.
ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
No.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Allah Hafiz.
Assalamu
Excellent job.
Also, this video is on Facebook for anyone that wants to share it. So it's on the MC. Every week we broadcast it to Facebook, so you can share it to whoever you want to.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
All right.